Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to rather mild Stoke. It's very pleasant. Yeah, very nice sort of sunshine. It's certainly not worthy of all the layers that I have on at the moment, but I'm hoping it. Well, I'm not hoping at all, actually. I want to be proven wrong. But anyway, team news will be here in about a minute or so. Norwich City, of course, back in what I'm assured is the Midlands and not the North. I called it the North earlier, and I was corrected. So there we go. Anyway, Norwich City team news is here. So this is what it looks like. Christos Solis starts for Norwich City this afternoon. Teemu Pukki comes in to the 11 and Abu Kamara makes the bench. So Norwich City line up like this. Angus Gunn in goal. Aarons, Hanley, Gibson and Giannoulis as the back four. McLean and Sørensen as the midfield two, I would suggest. I wonder if we're going to see Josh Sargent in a wide role with Jolis on the other flank and Gabriel Sara behind Teemu Pukki. The subs bench is Krul, Omibamidele, Marquinhos, McCallum, Nunez, Gibbs and Kamara. So that's how Norwich City line up. I'll read that for you again. Gunn in goal, Aarons, Hanley, Gibson and Giannoulis as the back four. McLean and Sørensen as the midfield two. I'm guessing it's going to be Sargent on the right, Jolis on the left with Sara behind Teemu Pukki. The subs from Krul, Omibamidele, Marquinhos, who of course had that red card from Wednesday night overturned after Norwich City's successful appeal. Sam McCallum, Marcelino Nunez, Liam Gibbs and Abu Kamara. Paddy, David, I mean, obviously, Norwich are contending with a few injuries here this afternoon, particularly in those creative midfield areas. Christos Solis comes in. I think it's his first start since he returned from FC Twente in January. What do you make of that team selection from David Wagner?
Well, immediately, the first thing I was looking for was the Gibson-Eder situation. Both of those came off within 5 minutes of each other in the first half on Wednesday night. You had a line from Stephen Kenny, the Republic manager, said Adam Eder was in the squad but would be getting a scan on Friday. He's not in the 18, so that doesn't look too good in terms of his international commitments. But with our Norwich hats on, we'll obviously get an update from David after the game. First touch point with him since post-match Wednesday night. And let's hope that isn't beyond the international period anything too bleak for Adam Eder. But on the flip side of that, Ben Gibson clearly went off that precautionary hamstring issue. Fit enough to start today, although I'm sure there'll be plenty on the comments here who would have hoped maybe Omibamidele would retain his place. We'll gloss over maybe his role in the equaliser for Huddersfield. But in terms of your question directly, Connor, Jolis in, I just feel they're not getting enough for me from the front areas of the team. That was graphically evident again midweek. And you could have shuffled one or two other personnel there, and I think it probably feels like, looking at how David Wagner's put that team out today, that it needs a spark. And we know Jolis, very exciting potential. More recently, we saw that excellent goal he scored when he came on at Carrow Road, and just the quality of that finish. That's what he does possess. We've seen it nowhere near sustained enough in a Norwich shirt. We know that. But they brought him back early from 20 in January because David Wagner thought he was a player with potential who they could work with. He talked about how they wanted to bring him back early so that they could really start to get him to understand what he wants from him in this type of side, a David Wagner side. And I think Sam, our colleague, actually asked him, didn't he, after the game on Wednesday about Jolis specifically, why he hadn't had a start yet. And it was kind of, well, we've had Eder, we've had Sargent, we've had Marquinhos, we've had Onel Hernandez. Well, today he gets his opportunity. So, it's really, really for him to go and grasp it. And it's, with Zara still in that more advanced position, I think that's a good signal as well. I wouldn't have liked to seen him drop deeper, because I think you will get most, as he showed again midweek. That's where you're going to get the most out of him. And Sargent and Pukki, well, I think Teemu definitely needs a decent performance today. I don't think we've seen enough from him since he came back after the calf issue. But, if it is going to be the 2 and the 3 and the 1, then it will be the GOAT leading the line. And you just collectively, as well as individually, we need to see more from them. That second half was nowhere near good enough midweek when they put themselves in such a commanding position. Okay, they were only 1-0 up on the night, but they were so much better than Huddersfield that first half. And then to throw in what they did in the second half, we know the mitigation in terms of the injuries, and that limited his room for manoeuvre, maybe with the subs that the lights were made in that second half. But that doesn't really wash for me. That Norwich were so lethargic again, as we saw against Sunderland last weekend. And it's unfathomable, really, given the situation, given they're on the cusp of the top six, trying to get into the top six again. You'd have wanted to see more urgency and intensity and energy. We saw none of that in that second half. And so for me, will we see that today? Because if they don't, I'm pretty sure Alex Neil's Stoke on the cusp of a good run now themselves. You'll see that from the home side. And if Norwich don't match that, unfortunately, I think we know what the outcome will be today.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Stoke specifically and why this game feels so challenging or potentially so challenging. I'll just bring you the Stoke team. Interestingly, it looks like a three at the back for them this afternoon. They've got Bonham in goal, Wilmot, Twansebe and Fox, Hover, Pearson, Lawrence, Smallbone and Sterling as the 5 with Brown and Campbell. The 2, their subs fielding Jagielka, 41 years of age, by the way. If he comes on today, it'll be his 800th career appearance, which is a remarkable return. Of course, former Everton, Sheffield United defender, amongst numerous others. Baker, Timon, Thompson, Taylor and Holland Wilkinson make up their bench. What do you make of that defensive partnership, Pad, for Norwich? Gibson and Hanley have taken quite a bit of criticism, I think, for recent displays. They've kind of taken, it feels for me at least anyway, most of the brunt of the criticism in terms of the individual error statistic that everyone will be aware of and is being populated around various circles, about how Norwich regularly concede errors that lead to shots and often goals as well. Why do you think David Wagner is persisting with those two? Because he's got a very viable option on the bench, Andrew Omobamidele. I think it's a testament to his progress. 20 years of age, he's spoken about so highly, but also viewed as someone who feels like an upgrade on 2 players who have won championship title, in Hanley's case, titles in the past. Why do you think he's persisting with that defensive duo?
Well, I mean, what I'd say for starters is Ben Gibson, before he had to go off with injury, I thought he played reasonably well at Huddersfield. So, and he certainly wasn't on the pitch when they conceded the goal they did, which was sourced in, depending how you want to splice up the responsibility, but it was a pass from Omobamidele into Zara, who got overturned, and then the yawning chasm that was the Norwich central defensive, because Grant Hanley had pulled right to try and create a passing option for Omobamidele, which wasn't used. It was just a really, really poor goal defensively, individually and collectively, in terms of shape and structure and what they're trying to do. But it does cut to the heart of the matter that there is a feeling, rightly or wrongly, that, and I'm sure it'll be tested again today, that teams, if they high press Norwich, will get some joy. Thank you very much. Cheers. Because they feel that ultimately, they will get an opportunity. And if David Wagner feels that is still an intrinsic part of what he's trying to build in terms of his Norwich team moving forward, then he looks at it and he must be making the assessment that on the ball, passing through those areas, he wants Gibson
was
and Hanley.
Most progressive passer at points before he went off.
He was, but I mean, you go back to last weekend and that ball he played aimlessly across the face of his own 6-yard box, went out of play behind Hanley and conceded a corner. Just chronic lack of confidence, really. And for me, if we want to broaden it out, Ben Gibson, I don't think is the Ben Gibson who was so dominant in his first and only title win at this level for Norwich, the second one under Farker, where round about this time of the year when he got that ankle injury and unfortunately had to come out, and ironically that's what gave Omobamidele his initial first team chance. But he was a standout in that season, that pandemic closed doors season. But he was a player, he'd step in, talking about passing, his range of passing, his bravery on the ball, just you thought, really excellent. And I maintain at that point, I don't think there was too many Norwich fans who were questioning converting that initial loan into a £8 million or so transfer, because that looked like good value. Unfortunately, I don't think he's ever been the same player since that injury period. Confidence issues, he's had issues with fitness. He just looks like a player who's on the downwards cycle, and that's probably why there is this groundswell of maybe it is time for Omobamidele. But there's the shorter term, and then there's the mid to longer term here. And while until it's not mathematically possible, they are still in with a viable opportunity to get into the top 6 this season. But the games are running out, and it needs to happen now. And if David Wagner's looking at it and trying to limit the variables, does he err on the side of a more experienced player in Gibson, and maybe keep Omobamidele in reserve? He was playing Omobamidele, let's get that straight, in his first few games alongside Hanley, and then just felt more or less that maybe the workload had caught up with a player who himself missed most of last season through injury, that stress-related issue with his lower back, and he's brought him out of the side. So I don't think it's necessarily he doesn't fancy Omobamidele in that sense, because he was playing alongside Hanley. it feels akin to the boy with his finger in the dike. There's so many issues he's trying to solve at the minute now. We've talked initially at the top end of the pitch, midfield. That's a reoccurring issue as well, and likewise defensively as well. So, I guess you maybe look at it and think, well, I've got two experienced centre-backs, know what the game's all about, have proven themselves at this level before. For now, in the here and now, let's go with them and then maybe focus on other areas of the pitch. But do I understand where the debate's coming from? Absolutely. And ultimately, the debate will persist because of those three, two of those three haven't really made a persuasive case that, no, they are now Norwich's centre-backs under David Wagner. And it's really a case of will remain that until an injury maybe or a suspension means he has to shuffle it. Until he gets to that point, we're still going to keep having this debate, I think. And it's only going to intensify if, as we probably feel now, playoffs are going to be beyond them and it feels then it needs a bigger refresh in the summer. But, I'll throw that one straight back to you, Connor. For you, of the three, who starts out of those two at the minute?
Yeah, I can kind of see his reasoning for two reasons. One, the comment from Righty, which I'll flash up again, which I think is an excellent point. Gibson is the only left-footed option. There is that kind of point of natural balance. It's obviously you've got Grant Hanley, who's the captain. That's probably another sort of element of dynamics that's worth considering. But also, amid so much change at the top end of the pitch, and you alluded to it there, I think it is probably right not to kind of try and keep some kind of continuity about his sides. I think we've seen that from David Wagner since he's come in. So yeah, it does feel like there's going to be a lot of onus on those two this afternoon. If we sort of turn our focus to the game as a whole, one point actually I would make before on the team is it would be interesting to see. I'm guessing that's going to be Josh Sargent on the right, unless you disagree with that. That's
you got it right. You're not Connor, so I'm definitely going to defer to you on
well, when Pookie came on, he started in a wide role, but then that kind of switched at half time, didn't it? So I think you would probably be inclined to say that's the way that Norwich City will go. Josh Sargent has obviously played there a lot this season. Whether he'll be, I don't think he's personally been that happy at playing in that position, but we'll see how he gets on this afternoon. But the point more broadly about this game, Pat, you could sense it when you watched Alex Neil and read the quotes of Alex Neil's press conference yesterday. Of course, there's always that added ingredient of the fact that it's Norwich City and it's obviously a club and some people in the club that he would like to prove wrong, I'm sure. But he was absolutely licking his lips at the prospect of this in terms of how he feels his team can get at Norwich with their high press. They gave Middlesbrough a real game on Tuesday night. They've taken points off Blackburn and Sunderland. Obviously, Sunderland in spectacular fashion a couple of weeks ago. They're in a really good place. And he feels that this is a good opportunity for them to extend that run.
Absolutely. I was actually... You beat me to it. I just want to call up the table because I think I've got the most recent table here. I'm just looking how many. They're on 47 points, Stoke, from 37 played. So for them, really, it's all about next season now. I just wondered whether there was still, with a real good run, if they could make a case for the top six. But I think that's probably beyond them now. But you can guarantee. We're sat here in a stadium which has graced the Premier League for a decade or more under the Tony Pulis era. But everything here is geared up. They've got very wealthy owners, we all know.
Got spinny seats as well.
Yeah, well, okay, if you want to throw that one in as well. But I was thinking more in terms of Premier League sort of credentials. And this club is set up. And I'm sure that's what brought Alex Neil here. It was a little bit of a controversial departure from Sunderland. Maybe people looked at that and thought, well, this Sunderland, in their own way, have those boxes as well. It's a bit of a sideways move, but I'm pretty sure he would have spoken to the owners, spoken to the...
It does sound like there's going to be some funds this summer as well.
So it looks and feels like here from a distance that he knows he's got a good opportunity to get this club and will be back to get this club into the Premier League. So this now is about putting in the fundamentals and getting his ideas embedded, and then they'll probably go again in the summer in terms of the transfer window. And I would expect these to be at the right end of the table next season. So it feels like a club maybe starting to shift back in a more forward direction. So for those reasons alone, this feels a difficult assignment. But if you overlay, as you said, those comments from Alec Neil that he will look at how Norwich want to play. We've talked about it at length in this broadcast, and feel that if they get their press right, as Burnley did previously against Norwich, as Sunderland did most recently, the fact it's more or less the same personnel. In fact, it is the same back four who were on duty last Sunday and how uncomfortable they looked. It's obviously a slightly different midfield tweak with Sorensen in there, a bit more protection alongside McLean, you hope, in front of that back four. But it's increasingly feels like the eternal question now with Wagner and a Wagner Norwich side. Can they handle teams who want to come and press and turn over the ball in high areas, as Mowbray said. You win the ball high up against Norwich, one pass, you're in. And that's how they won the game at Carrow Road last weekend. So, yeah, there's no doubt whatsoever. Norwich, if they fall down in that area, it's going to be a long afternoon because it is a resurgent Stoke, albeit only 3 or 4 games. But as you say, midweek, probably deserve to beat Middlesbrough at Middlesbrough. So, if anybody thinks Norwich are going to come here, play or go through the motions a little bit as they did against Huddersfield and walk off with a point or even better, it's not going to happen today, I don't think. So they will need to find something considerably better than we've seen in the last 2 games particularly, and maybe over the entire piece. I mean, Millwall doesn't feel that long ago in terms of games played, but it does feel a long time since they played with that kind of freedom almost, and just everything cohesively feeling it was working with and without the ball. So yeah, I think if we're moving on to predictions, I can't see Norwich getting a result here today, if I'm honest. So, but as I said, pre-Huddersfield, I'm now forecasting defeats in the hope that then triggers a Norwich win. So, but I just think today, I think you've got one team who feel like things are coming together under a head coach who, as we know from his time at Norwich, certainly in that initial phase as well, very talismanic figure. And if he can get this club moving, then I think they will be in contention next season against the team who, I mean, for all the fears about who's going to play today, I mean, it's not a massively different lineup, is it? The starting 11. So you look at the bench, and of course, Kamara comes in alongside Gibbs. So there's a bit of a reflection in terms of what he can do from the bench. But in terms of that 11, I don't think that's an 11 where he can turn around and say, well, what did you expect? We didn't have the personnel today. There's plenty of experience, plenty of quality in that 11 for Norwich to come here and perform as we know they can perform. But unfortunately, we're not seeing enough of it in the last 2 or 3 games. So I'm going to stick to where I am now, which is forecasting a Stoke win. And hopefully we're actually talking about a positive, more akin to Millwall as opposed to Sunderland and Huddersfield. You, Connor?
Yeah, you said you started forecast with 4, and I wonder what on earth you were predicting then. I think you've summed up the game perfectly there. It's going to be one team that presses against one team that's going to try and play through it, and whoever has more success doing that will win this game, in my view. So it's going to be a really curious one. We'll obviously throw that open to you as well. So get your predictions in. Neil Loof has absolutely nailed your approach to it, so that's going to be interesting. Let's get your score prediction then, Pad. I think I
told you Stoke's going to win.
Yeah, what in terms of scoreline?
Okay. I don't really think Stoke are going to win, but I'm going to say Stoke are going to win. So I can see a draw if I'm honest, but 3-1 Stoke.
Right, okay.
I don't mean it.
No, you don't mean it. It's all reverse psychology. It's fine. I will go for a draw. I'll try and be a bit optimistic. I'm going to go for a 1-1 here today, which I think in the circumstances, in the form that Stoke are in, wouldn't be actually too bad at all, though maybe in terms of the season and the wider context of it, probably wouldn't be the best result for Norwich City when, let's be honest, with a 4-point gap to the playoffs, and I think Mill will have Huddersfield today as well, so an opportunity for them to grow that on the evidence of Wednesday night. It does feel like a big afternoon for Norwich City if they can get a win here this afternoon. I think we said at the start of the week 4 points from these 2 games we would probably deem as the minimum.
That was par. You hope for 6, but obviously now midweek 1-1. Yeah, no. If it's not a win today, then and who they've got the other side of the international break, Sheffield United at Carrow Road and Middlesbrough. I think Blackburn on the horizon. Very hard, because that'll be then Sunderland, Huddersfield and Stoke, and if they've not won any of those 3, how can you justifiably construct a case to the other side against really top level teams in this league? They've got enough about them to get themselves in the mix. So do we want to sort of package it as win or bust today? I don't know, but it feels a bit like that.
Yeah, it does feel like that. I think that's a good way of saying it. Whether it is or not, obviously time will tell, but that's certainly the feeling around this game. And you can join us over on the Pink and Plus app for live coverage. Obviously all of our coverage and analysis on the Pink and channels as well. A big afternoon for Norwich City. It certainly feels like that. I think there's 1,500 or so Norwich City fans who have made the trip up, which is a remarkable effort considering the train strikes and whatnot. So let's hope they produce a performance of those, and let's hope we see something improved from Wednesday night, which might not be difficult. I don't know. I'll let you decide. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you again very, very soon.